Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for February 14th, 2025. I'm Benji Fisher, sharing my screen and moderating. And also present are Ralph Kohler and Simo Hell. We're going to continue a discussion we've been having pretty much all month. The issue number is 3370326, refined field descriptions. And just for the sake of the recording, I'll briefly show what we're talking about when you add a new field to a content type. You have these options, some of which are individual field types like Boolean or email, and some of which give you the next step, two or more options. And it is the text for these options that we've been discussing. So we've been working with a spreadsheet that Ralph prepared some time ago. And we've gone through a lot of these types. And I guess we're ready to look at the selection list options. And I see that Thomas Howell has joined us. So shall we look at the selection list, or does anyone have anything to change from what we've talked about last week? Go ahead, Ralph.
Could you log into the other page? Yes. And I think one small detail we would have to discuss is the microcopy on the first step for file upload, because that is still stuck in the old pattern using field. As you can see, the changes we've discussed are applied on here. And now go back, please. Yeah, step. Yeah. As you can see, field to upload any type of files, that's line, would need an adjustment because we haven't had any on the Google Sheet. We only changed or came up with a suggestion for the media one.
So, all right, so it's the pattern of using field. These are all
Yeah.
fields, so there's no point in repeating that. Do you have a suggestion for that line of text?
Not yet. And although the other point is, yeah, that the general label for the group specifically refers to one of the options, file, but isn't covering basically the other. It's also suboptimal, but yeah, the description in general, not sure.
So most of the others follow one of two patterns. They're either noun phrases, text without markup and formatting. So text is the noun and the rest is modifying that. And some of them are more like sentences, like create media type, create text or number, um, store URL for a link. So I guess there are two patterns we could file. I guess we could just strike the first two words and say upload any type of file. And I think type of file should be singular, not plural. I got a thumbs up from Simo. Uh, shall we just do that, or other suggestions? So let's see, scroll back up to file uploads. And where is it on the other
In the
tab?
other sheet, yep, other tab.
File upload. And which,
1 second. I
column?
moved the media up
Okay,
that way. And
so start with that and then remove, load any type of file. Okay. So I think we can go back to this tab. Um, and oh, I guess I have the two sites open. I could keep this tab. This is my site open at selection at this page in selection list. And let me give you the link if you care to log in the Zoom chat. As usual, admin. And Ralph, could you repost your link? Because I think Thomas got here after you did that. And then on Ralph's copy of the site, I can go one step further. So here's the current text, um, which is already using some examples. So that is closer to the pattern we've been using on other types. Um, so this hasn't been modified yet, right, Ralph? This is the same
correct.
thing I would
Yeah.
see on my site. Um,
There's one detail to note. Those examples don't work with the current type of UI that has changed at one point after those were introduced. You will see in a minute.
okay. Um, so I guess first the text on this page. Does anyone want to suggest an alternative to selection list? But I think we can do the same shortening that we did on the next line, remove the word field to
That is already removed. If you take a look at my example,
create text or number-based list with predefined option. So I guess looking back at this tab, there we go. So here's the current text and here's Ralph's recommended.
no, it's ours. That was from the UX meeting.
Okay,
Current draft is UX meeting, and mine is uh, in column F.
all right. So we've already looked at that.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so I guess we can copy this over for now. And right, I guess the options list of text, list of integer, list of float. Um, so we're repeating the word list each time. I'm trying to remember what context this appears in other than here, and maybe it doesn't. Maybe this is the only place where that occurs. So I guess Ralph's proposal is that we simplify that and just say text, integer, float. Any comments on that? I think that's the right thing to do. And then values stored are text values. Text strings stored. Um, like is that line and looking at all three are is this line here, value stored or text values, is that adding any information that's not already in the label? Numbers without decimals. And I guess, to me, the distinction between integer and float is clear, but I guess that's not everyone is as familiar with it as I am. So maybe um, this first line is something that we should have, but I think we can remove the repetitive text values stored are and just say numbers without decimals, floating point numbers, um, text values, fixed strings, perhaps? Or is that more a programmer's way of looking at it rather than a site builder's way of looking at it? Don't make me do all the talking.
Yeah, sorry, I got stuck with them like the text and text string stored because I uh, was thinking about the fact that text string stored, it's kind of a not quite descriptive because I think the text strings are stored in order because something I encountered, like it's been several years, but one of the things is that if you reorder the text options and then export the configuration, you need to be careful with the order of the strings in the configuration file because the translations are not referring to the strings, but they are referencing to the order of like uh, like
Oh,
so if you change the configuration one language configuration, it then it needs to be in the correct order to match the translation. So it's those are not translated as strings, which is a little bit confusing because they don't reside in the like they are configuration and not content. So it's sometimes a bit confusing, but this is not helpful for maybe for me trying to figure out what to call it. But it somehow, if we could add uh, that they are like ordered, so there is a specific order of lines that is involved.
I mean,
In,
that seems to me more like a bug that should be fixed rather
uh,
than something fundamental to the
yeah.
content model.
Oh, might be the process that you should never like manually translate configuration or edit configuration. So that's also a process, but or actually the text strings are stored in the node, but the options available are stored in the configuration.
Um,
uh, just one note in case of the list text. There are no options. It's just a name field. If you go one step further in and so just select the list text one. Just mean that it only applies to integer and floats, and probably the problem you've described, Simo.
No, this is it stores the allowed values to if you export configuration, it stores the values, I think, to the configuration file, and then you can choose them. But in the database, I think it stores it as a string. So if you change that list, it won't change the ones that already have the values.
So Ralph, why did you want me to go to this page?
No, I just about Simo. Then I
Yeah.
misunderstood Simo's point. I thought
Okay.
basically that it only applies to value pairs, and those value pairs are only available on integer and float, and text only has that name field. That was the thinking behind.
Yeah, but the pairing for translation is done like in the order of the in the order of lines in the text. But that's we are not looking at translation now here.
Okay.
So there is a second field. It's de-emphasized, but it is editable. Whoa. It's supposed to be editable.
So I can,
Ew.
yeah. Okay.
In theory.
Okay, well that's a bug. Um,
Whoa.
that one's a little
Now they
better.
even overlap, like the usability is machine name and performance is name. They overlap like completely, I think, the fields.
Right. So, Ralph, is this using the gin theme?
No. Oh, is
This is Claro.
1 second. No, it's Claro.
Wow.
What browser are you using?
Firefox.
Okay, in Safari it works.
Ha.
There, basically the bluish background is expanding to that it's wrapping around the name and the value field.
All right. Well, let's try to stay focused. So there are two fields. There's the label and the machine value or machine name. Um, the current interface de-emphasizes the machine name. But there are two values there. And then I guess Simo's point about translation is that the the whole field configuration is one editable item rather than each label being translated separately. Is that right?
Yeah. And also another thing is about if you want to edit, add or remove options, it's possible. But I'm thinking that it might maybe change at some point. So if you store this, add this to the basic page and maybe add, like if you say this field like this, so there are two options, and then edit a basic page.
I do we have to go down this? I'd sort of like to
Okay,
stay
yeah,
focused
we
on.
don't need to. Yeah. So, but it's not text values, but it's a uh, pair of values, machine name and that text name and the machine name, and I think it's yeah.
But those old examples stem from a time when the interface was different. There you had basically two fields on the list text page, while now you have just a single, and therefore the proposed example is different.
So so the machine name is by default the lowercase version, but I think you can still make it whatever you want.
Are there any other places where you can use uppercase for machine name?
Um, I don't think that machine name has a general technical meaning in Drupal. It in many contexts, in most contexts, um, it restricts you to lowercase ASCII characters and underscores. Um, but in this case, I'm pretty sure that the data model hasn't changed. It was just the user interface that changed. And so I think this seems to be allowed. So my point is that the example is still possible. It's just discouraged by the current user interface. So this example is still possible, but um, we might prefer a different example. But I think we can just shorten the text a lot, perhaps text strings. Like unless you think it's very important to say that this is what's stored, which is what the current text is suggesting. Whole numbers, floating point numbers. Um, so I guess when I write it that way, um, it's I'm removing the repetitive text, the values stored are, and what I'm left with is not giving much more information than the label.
Do we know what is the maximum length of the text string?
Um,
Does it have?
I'm not sure. Is that a level of detail that we give in other contexts? I guess for the number options, we probably
What number we provided it? At least in some contexts for decimal and for... No, we haven't. Oh, we provided it for short formatted text and short plain text.
Okay, for decimal numbers we did maximum values depend on the system. For integers, limits provided by the system. And then for plain text,
Fixed maximum length.
okay, so we did give that level of detail for others. Um,
But is it really necessary in this context? Because those are options to pick from a select list, and therefore you won't have basically a full-fledged paragraph.
I'm not sure what you mean. We won't have a full-fledged paragraphs.
I mean, you have a...
What if it's like a list of paragraphs with radio buttons? So you choose like could be more than 255 characters or could be something. So if it could be, so the input is not designed for longer. So that's kind of giving you a clue when you start adding the options. But at this stage, you don't know if you can add like snippets or something like that.
So, simple question. Do you think it's important to say what the limits are for integers, floating points, and text strings?
I think it should be communicated at this point that you can't expect to use. You can't create. You can't create like a well-functioning like selection list of snippets, for instance. So or like somebody could use this kind of try to use this as options of choosing which kind of signature to put or something like that. But you can't have, so it's a single line. We could say that it's a single line, maybe, or something like that. So you can't have kind
Uh,
of line breaks, I think. Or can you somehow with special characters?
that's a good question.
So basically, text value can have line breaks, but so it should be.
It's like if you had a bunch of canned responses that you used on issues on Drupal.org,
Yeah.
this would not be an appropriate way to save them.
But you allowed HTML tags. You can have paragraphs. So it's here it says you're allowed to use HTML also. That's something that is useful. So you can use like paragraphs, line break, even images.
Even image?
Yes, the last one.
Wow. That never would have occurred to me.
Yeah.
So it's actually a field that allows markup where we we don't get CK editor. So you actually could use this for multiple paragraphs. And of course, you again have the option to edit the default text. It seems to be the stored text seems to be limited in length. And I
Yeah.
wonder, let me try to generate an error here. I'm going to change this to the same as one of the other values. Oh my gosh, it let me do that. Oh no, I'm finding bugs all over the place. And okay,
But it overwrites the other one.
yeah, oh gosh. All right, if I remember, I'll file I'll create an issue for that. That really shouldn't happen. Um, but so given that you can put limited HTML markup in there, do we want to mention that at this point?
Yeah, I think that's relevant.
So let's see, we are more than halfway through the meeting. Um, do you want to suggest something here to get across the idea that there are labels and machine names, one of which is stored in the database and one of which is displayed to the user?
Uh, I think Thomas is having.
Yeah, go ahead,
Uh,
Thomas.
I have a concern, and that's it's a really edge casey thing. And when I first started using Drupal in the very early days, things like lists were one of the most basic things someone who doesn't know HTML would use. And that would have confused me. That's anecdotal. I don't have any reason to express that other than I think I would not have even known how to process adding in a bunch of code stuff, and it would have caused me to question using it. It seems to be something I would expect to see in documentation because of how edge casey it is, rather than something that I'd expect to see in a UI. And apologies if that like derails things. It's just trying not to talk about it, but I don't know why it just really bothers me.
So again, what is it you want to see in documentation but not in the UI?
I wouldn't
Yes.
like this is just a text list, and getting into how we would use HTML inside a text list, it it, it seems like something that is ripe for breaking things. I don't know why it isn't just plain text. It confuses me that we can do that.
Okay, but well, it seems that we can, and I think maybe we won't mention it at this point. They'll find it out here where there's already this help text telling them what they can do.
Right. Yeah. Like that's a better location for me than here. And
Okay. Ralph?
But strictly speaking, shouldn't it be then more explicit in the label and not be just text, but technically speaking, formatted text? Because you have the option of using HTML elements.
Text strings with limited formatting. something like that.
No, I thought rather instead of the label text, go with formatted text, same as for the formatted text on another field.
Ah,
So you have the selection list formatted text option.
like so.
Yeah.
Okay. And Thomas gives a thumbs up to that. Simo?
Yeah, I'm thinking that if we tell user that they can input formatted text, then they will be angry when they see just a single input instead of a text area. So I think they should be like resolved so that we could have a short text and long text selection lists, maybe not even as a storage, but as a kind of configuration forms. So you could maybe have something on the configuration form to toggle that
Oh,
widget. So that's going a bit far, but I think having something as user chooses formatted text, and then they see that there is a single input where to put the formatting. So that's not going to be nice for a beginner.
okay, so if you're suggesting allowing further options, that's out of scope for this issue.
Yeah, it is. But I think.
So
But what you can do with that one, I think formatted text is fine. Then we just have to look at the interface of the configuration form, which is out of scope for this one.
right. So what we currently have in front of us, it says formatted text, but then the next line mentions that it's limited formatting. You could also say that just the word text without calling it plain text or formatted text doesn't limit you. And we have this next line saying that it's formatted. So I guess I'm kind of leaning towards going back to just text for this line and then mentioning the limited formatting down here. Okay, I'm getting a couple of thumbs up. Great. You agree. So text strings with limited formatting. And then this is kind of long and not entirely accurate because it doesn't have to be a short version, but it usually is. Go ahead, Ralph.
But strictly speaking, what does that sentence mean at all? Because each string has a short version. Does it mean the machine name, or what does it refer to?
That is what I'm trying to get across, yes.
Okay.
Which in this example over here, it is a short version. In the example that I worked over here, right, the default for this it's not only shortened, it is sanitized, that is, it's converted to lowercase letters and underscores. But as we saw, we could also use capital letters in there, right? I'm just trying to cause trouble here. Is that going to give me an error? Um, it seems to allow even spaces in the machine name.
But you can
Go ahead.
edit that one, but not that. Oh yeah, I added that is in use, that performance. I checked how it looks in the front, like a rendered content. So you can't edit the machine name for those that are in use.
Ah, yes, I see.
What happens if you edit the next one's machine name, like the there are some
This one?
into capital letters performance?
Um, uh, this doesn't seem to let me do that. Ralph, what do you want to say?
Just one question. Is the concept of machine names a known concept for less technical users? So could we address it simply as machine names, or should be a synonym like a shortened version be used? Because otherwise you could simply say as a bullet point an auto-generated machine name, or a machine name is auto-generated based on that name label or something like that.
I kind of think that's not useful information, that they will find that out when they start using this page.
Yeah, but then if you take a look, I wonder then each string has a short version that is stored in the database is also not really helpful or necessary.
I think maybe we don't need that information in the description about the short versions.
Yeah.
Or that I think the field name also has the machine name, so it's kind of something that this is not the first time any user encounters machine name, because it's in the the first field of the form already before or this one already. If you type in the label, then you already see that machine name similar.
Right, and it is called a machine name in the interface.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe the important thing is that once you start using an option, you're not allowed to change the machine name, but you are allowed to change the label or the name. Is that something that's worth explaining on this stage?
Yeah, I think so, because it's not about that machine name, but you're not allowed to remove it. So you can't remove all the options. Like if you have a content that has option like 2022, and then you want to remove all the references to all the mentions of the year 2022, you can't remove them from the field configuration. You can't remove the option. So you have to remove it from all the content,
Right.
each of the content. So that's I think significant for user.
And Ralph?
Just one remark. If you go to the list text page, for example, add a label and continue. Scroll up. Just scroll up. All those information, strictly speaking, is already communicated up there, what we're talking right now. And I think I consider it in that context of where the field setting is set up more or better suited, and therefore I guess doesn't make sense to have it in the second step.
Okay, so you think that this is the appropriate place for the information, and we should just remove this.
Yeah, because that kind of information is about the usage, and that is more suited in the field settings, in the
Okay,
context of field settings. And here it's about choosing which field type to go with it, not about the usage.
Yeah. And actually about deleting options, if we want to say that you can't delete options that are in use, I think that should be in the description of selection lists as whole.
okay,
Because probably the same for all of them.
okay, and we're getting a thumbs up from Thomas. So let's just leave that out. And I guess the only other thing we want is to come up with a decent example.
Yep.
And I think following, I guess we used for example here, so we should be consistent there. So Ralph's suggestion is to use a list of roles. I think that might be confusing uh, because that's something that a site builder would see in the context of users, and we don't want to suggest that roles are just a list of text fields.
Yeah. My reasoning behind was simply I wanted to step away from an US-centric example.
Okay.
But yeah, I agree that it might be confusing, the example I went with.
So what would be a good example, Thomas?
Are there any common things like morning, noon, and night, or basically just a word pattern that makes it clear that you can generate that list?
Yeah, morning, noon, and night might work, or days of the week. Simo?
I think people are used to seeing examples with apples and oranges. So fruit is a common example in programming and other stuff. So list of fruits, and they can be referenced as shopping list or whatever. So I'd go with fruits.
Okay, a thumbs up from Ralph. For example, fruits, apple, maybe I'll capitalize them. Apple, orange, grape, something like that.
Banana.
Banana. That's true. That is one. I think that's the most popular fruit in the world. Should we alphabetize them? Apple, banana, grape, orange?
No, I think it's a better example if we don't alphabetize them.
Ah, okay. Ralph?
The only nitpick I would have is, and there's something I've tried in the suggestion I came up with, is to make it more clear what goes in the label, meaning fruits, and what goes in the allowed values, meaning apple, orange, grape, and banana. So be more instructional in the context of that interface and what to use.
Okay, so I, sort of hinted at that with the name of my field and then a colon and then the options. But you want to be more explicit?
At least I would lean towards, because yeah, be explicit, and that way people don't start to think.
For example, the fruits list could contain apple, orange, grape, banana. Is that?
Yeah, for example, yeah.
Shall we go with that?
Or another option might be, for example, use fruits as label and apple, orange, grape, banana as values, as the values.
I don't want to talk about labels because, um, I think of the name as the label. So it's really fruits is the name or the label of the field, and apple, orange, grape, banana are the labels or the names of the options in that field. The fruits list, we could say the fruits field. The fruits. We could say could contain options. change this to fields. What do you think?
Yeah.
Now, if that's good enough, then let's go on to other examples. So for integers, the current text, I guess the current text is also here, suggests that there's the same sort of stored value and displayed value, but I think that you get the option. Oh, it does. I'm kind of surprised. So it's basically the same structure that you have formatted text, and the only difference is that the value is restricted to be an integer. Gee, I didn't realize that. And let me try again. Where's select list? Selection list. So in all cases, the displayed value, the name or the label, can be limited formatting. The only difference is the stored value. So really talking about the limited formatting, that's not a differentiator. That's a common property of all the options here. So that should really go
In the first step.
yeah, it's a common value of all of these, so it should really be a description.
Of the field group. Yeah.
So let's see. In the spreadsheet, do we have a place for overview information with
In
that
step 1.
in the other tab? Um,
In column E, create text. Oh yeah, or column D, yeah. Create text or number-based list with predefined options.
so I'm thinking of, you know, adding a description field either above or below the list of options. And I don't think we have a place for that on um, the spreadsheet. And I'm just noticed the time. Um, and I'm afraid we have to cut it off at this point. It's only 1 minute before the hour. So my current thinking is that the idea that there are these names or labels and stored values, somehow we have to get that across on this page. And it's not a differentiator between the options. So it should be outside the list of options. And Ralph in the chat says, create a text or number-based list with predefined options. So you were thinking of
Yeah, my
this
thought was, yeah,
this
communicate
text.
it there, but it might be too
Yeah, I think it's more information than we can put
much.
on this
Yeah.
page.
Yep.
So thanks for this discussion. This turned out to be a lot more complicated than I realized. And by the way, next week, I'll be at Florida Drupal Camp, assuming that I can get a decent internet connection from my hotel room or the venue. I'll be able to run the meeting as usual, but I will be away from home.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Thanks all for coming.
Thank you. Nice
Thank you.
weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.